Full disclosure, I did grow up in a very traditional Jewish, Hasidic environment. 3 times a day prayers were said, holidays, Shabbat, Yom Kippur, of course. I can't say that prayer spoke to me. I always found it quite boring, quite monotonous, very conformist. Yes, I learned the prayers, but I wasn't taught how to pray. So, as many of us, we either did it by obligation or guilt, or just dropped the whole thing. A lot of things we do maybe to make somebody else happy. It is only later in life when I began to appreciate what prayer truly is. But it's critical to identify, first of all, the stereotypes, many of them which are accurate. Prayer together with religion is usually dismissed, and again for good reason, because that's the way it was presented to us, as something trite, mechanical, robotic, at best, and at worst, a useless and wasted time. So I fully acknowledge that, and that's why I'm beginning with that point, because there's so many other topics and issues that I can tell you 80-90% of the work in communication is to dispel stereotypes. I want to make this clear. This does not mean the stereotype is illegitimate. You go to places and you have an experience, so-called religious or traditional or ritualistic experience, and it really is a big turnoff. You see people who are just, I mentioned, mediocre, conformity, judgmental, angry, punitive, all the words. Watch any Woody Allen movie, you'll know exactly what I mean. Or just think of your own experiences in this regard. And the interesting thing is that many, many people have, in a sense, as I usually like to say, that Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Badichver told his neighbor who was a self-proclaimed atheist, the God you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. So the fact is, unfortunately, many of us have experienced negative association with religious and ritualistic, and including prayer. The famous joke where a kid comes Yom Kippur services, and he was not interested really in the service. He came to find his father. His mother said, go find your father, pass on a message. The doorman said, where's your ticket? And he said, I don't have a ticket. He says, then you can't come in. He said, I'm not coming in to pray. I'm only coming to send a message to my father. So the doorman looks at him suspiciously and says, okay, kid, I'll let you go in, but don't let me catch you praying. So you can imagine what kind of impression, funny, but it's an impression that leaves you, okay, that's what is prayer. Just getting paid for services, people paying their membership dues. Is there something deeper? So let's talk about this. The word for prayer in Hebrew is tefillah. It actually comes from a word of bonding, connecting, binding. Another interesting statement is that prayer is called the service of the heart. It's not about mechanical words. It's not about even going to synagogue and praying with others. Yes, synergy always has its power. Prayer truly is speaking from your heart. Speaking from your heart. Today they call it emotional intelligence, emotional communication. Many of us are very cerebral. That's study. That's using your cognitive skills. But how well do we communicate emotionally? So prayer really is exactly that, being able to pour out your heart. It can be through tears, it can be through laughter, it can be through words, it can be through no words. So prayer is really learning how to be yourself, how to emote, how to have the courage and not be afraid to express yourself. And who do you express yourself first to? Your own soul. Speak to yourself. Speak to God. Whatever you're the God of your choice, higher power, a force beyond yourself. Anything you'd like to define as that. Not the words are vital here. Because as I said, the word God itself can be also filled with stereotypes and myths. Someone sitting on a throne, a long, wide-bearded guy sitting on an old man sitting on a throne, ready to strike us with lightning when we misbehave. No. Identify it from your heart and soul in a way that you recognize that you can express yourself You can call out. You can reach. I assure you, when you do that, it will help you emote also with other human beings. Emotional expression begins very young age. In a healthy home, our parents allow us to emote. They invite us to emote. They invite us to express ourselves, whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable. So prayer really is about you. It's not about making God happy. It's not making about other people happy. It's about you and your ability to express yourself. And the place you want to express yourself, obviously you can pray for anything, but you want to really reach deep into your heart and soul of the things that are really vital to you, things that you need in your life, which includes finding the right spouse, finding the right relationship, having good relationships with your friends, with people you care about, working through some of your own fears, insecurities, your demons. All this is part of what real prayer is about. So then you may ask the question, so then why do we have prayer books? Why do we need to follow certain words? Which seems the antithesis of expressing yourself. You're fitting yourself into someone else's words, whether it's the Shema or other prayers. And I should say this is not just about a Jewish prayer thing. I'm talking about for all human beings, each one of us. It's universal. The crying out, the yearning of your heart. So why all these words? The simple answer is it's similar to musical notes. Why do you need musical notes? Why don't you just play an instrument by ear? Because as much as you can play by ear, the notes create a structure that was defined by those before us that were masters. Not that we're trying to constrict us. Musical notes are not meant to limit, to structure it. It's meant to free it. So the methods used and the notes used help us actually transcend structure with the structure of musical notes. So you can have someone play a song on a piano, on a violin, or any other instrument, and it sounds quite dead. Someone else comes and it comes alive. Same tune. So it's not about the notes per se. The notes are the defined structures. It's what heart and soul you invest in it. So we're told that when King David, who was the author of the book of Psalms, a book full of prayers, crying out in his anguish, in his joy, in his pains, in his afflictions, he asked God, he said, may it be your will that the words I used to call out to you, the words I used to soothe myself, to calm, to bring a deeper element of true, higher truth, a higher reality, and a higher consciousness in my life, may these words become the words that people will use through generations. And God granted his request and said, your words will become words that all can use. The words are not meant for us to fit into the words. The words are just simply a master poet's attempt to give us some language that may be helpful to us. The goal here, however, is you should call with your voice, with your sound. If you need your own words, use your own words. But if you do learn the musical notes, it'll help you. It could make the job easier, so to speak. Easier to express. It's like learning language. The language is not meant to limit you. The language is meant to be a tool for you to express yourself better. So in that sense, prayer is really a very personal journey, a very personal experience. In some of the books it says, some of the mystical works, it tells us that when Jacob dreamt the famous ladder, Jacob's ladder, the ladder had 4 rungs because prayer consists of 4 stages. And prayer is like a ladder that stands on earth, but the top of the ladder reaches into the heavens. We all are always looking to seek, to look and search to go to the heaven itself, to bridge and marry heaven and earth. So we search for our ladders. Our ladders are our ways to transcend, to get out of the monotony and the rut of the vicissitudes, of our routines, of our structures. So we have a ladder. What are the 4 steps? The 4 steps actually allow us to go from a more mundane state to a more sublime state. And each of us may have different ways we travel this 4 steps, and the 4 steps themselves may be different. But briefly, step number 1 is recognizing that you are not alone, that there's something out there, there's something greater than you. It's looking at the ladder, looking up, and beginning to recognize, I woke up in the morning, it's not all about life on this earth. There's a deeper spiritual state of consciousness, and you begin that journey. But it's still, of course, very much influenced and under the effect of whatever the state of sleep you were in, or whatever material activity you're involved in. Stage number 2 is beginning to appreciate and concentrating on the more subtle and sublime elements in your life. Thinking about your soul, thinking about love, thinking about gratitude, and other elements that help you put yourself in a state of a higher state of consciousness, which is not quite like the first step. The first step is essentially like the first steps right after you wake up. You're just refreshing yourself. Second step, you're immersing. Third step is where you begin to express it in emotions. What do you truly love? Not just who do you love, but what do you love? What are the true loves of your life? And when you think about it, do you love the food you eat, the places you travel to, the things that entertain you? Yes, you may like them, but love is a lot deeper than that. You want to love something that is transcendent in nature. So the second step would be more of a contemplative process. The third is an emotional process. So even though prayer in general is emotional, but that third step helps you really align yourself, your mind followed by your heart, that your emotions are traveling to deeper and greater places. Very often we get trapped in the loves of our lives or the things that seduce us. Whatever is right now pleasurable, instant gratification. This third step helps you align and say, let me be emote, let me feel things that are not necessarily that which is the immediate or gives me that sugar high, but something longer term. And what's the fourth step? The fourth step is considered to be complete absorption. That if you go through the first steps properly, now you're in the zone, as they say. Your self is absorbed and dissolves into a higher state. It's like when you're standing in awe of something beautiful. So initially you say, oh, this is awesome. You may even document it. You share your commentary. But there comes a point where it completely captivates you, like looking at a portrait or listening to music. And you don't even realize that you are just completely absorbed by the music. You ever being immersed in a book? You don't even realize there are words and you're turning the pages. You experience the emotions as if you become one. Subject and object have become one. These are the four stages that each of us can employ as we learn to emote. Very difficult to jump to step 4 without step 1. So again, the first step is to move from a more materialistic and spatial and time experience to something that's a little beyond that. Second step is to contemplate on spirit and spiritual matters. The third step is to emote on that matter, on that same concept, but emote feeling for it, loving it. And the fourth is where everything becomes one in a unified whole. Try it out. It may take some time, but we learn by training. What's interesting is that when you think of it this way, it completely is different than what we understand prayer. It's not about running to a synagogue or to another house of worship and just following along and saying, I can't keep up because everyone's praying so quickly. It's about you. It's about you and God. It's about you and your soul. It's about learning how to speak, how to emote. In many ways, emotional intelligence is more elusive today. Or maybe it's always been, because we want to be like tough. We don't, say men don't cry. And the same thing, some people, women feel they want to be tough, they can't be emotional and so on. Emotions is what makes the world go around. Intellect is important, but it's like a computer, it's data, it's information. It's information that guides us. But where does life play itself out? In the heart, the service of the heart. And prayer is the expression of that service, of that heartfelt expression. We all wish, and I wish, we could turn back the clock and not have had all these negative experiences about prayers and synagogues and other religious rituals. But that's what it is. What we have to do is revisit, reframe, reinvent our spiritual lives. In America, they say statistics show that over 90% of Americans believe in some form of God and spirituality. Only 40-some percent associate with a religion. That's a big discrepancy. Why? Because religion is associated with words like ritual, tradition, community, conformity, prayer, house of worship, clergy, authority. And then when you go to the more negative side, as I mentioned, anger, guilt, punitiveness, punishment. Who wants to be part of that? I'm not suggesting there aren't some positive elements in community, the warmth, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, the communion. Spirituality, when you ask anybody, the knee-jerk reaction, spirit, free-spiritedness. music, soul, transcendence, freedom. And these two seem to be antithetical. The truth is they don't have to be. It's unfortunate that there are people, as they say, more religious, less spiritual. The more spiritual, less religious. Because religion is associated with actions, with rituals, which without a soul and without a spirit can be quite dead and even destructive, frankly. It's associated also with hypocrisy. Hey, you're doing all the rituals, but are you a nicer person? Are you more refined? And the same with prayer. Prayer could also fall into the category of a religious activity. That's not what it is. It's a spiritual activity. And combined, when you take the ritual and you add the SPI before ritual, SPI spiritual, then you have soul and body. And that's why it says prayer without intent, without deeper intent, is like a body without a soul. What is that called? Not to be morbid, a corpse. It's not alive. Yes, you have the body. The Baal Shem Tov, the great mystic, the great founder of the Hasidic movement, once went into a synagogue. And he came running out. He says, it's too packed for me there. I can't stay there. It's too packed. I'm crushed. And the people looked at him very surprised. They looked into the synagogue and it was pretty empty. There was room, the room to sit. I mean, there were people there, but it was not crushed. So they said to the Baal Shem Tov, what are you talking about? The Baal Shem Tov says, the Zohar, the classic work of Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah says, that prayer without intention is like a bird without wings. What happens to a bird without wings? It's grounded. He says the synagogue was so filled with so many grounded birds that I couldn't stay there. It was packed. The prayers were not going anywhere. They remained and crushed anyone that entered that room. He sensed it. We need the wings. The wings is the love, the awe, the emotional expression, not just hollow words. You coming to the table. Same Baal Shem Tov, once Rosh Hashanah, announced that there was a very serious decree in heaven. Please, everybody come and gather. Let's pray together. So, of course, all the great people came, the pious ones, the scholars, the mystics, and the poets, and the romantics, began to pray to no avail. A little child walked in, a farm boy, who didn't know Hebrew, didn't know any prayers. And the only thing he saw, everybody was crying. So he began to cry. What did he cry? He only had one cry, the cry of the rooster. Because he was a farm boy. He would wake up with the rooster would cry. So he began, kukurikoo, 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 sound of a rooster. The Baal Shem Tov looked around and said, the heavens have been pierced by that cry. So it's not the words, it was because it was the sincerity, the intention. And one final, one of my favorites. The same Baal Shem Tov was once needed to go pray for a woman who had a child that was unfortunately very sick. The doctors had given up. And she's crying. She says, I'm a widow, Baal Shem Tov. Please help me. It's my only child, my little child. Baal Shem Tov had the compassion and empathy. And he went and gathered together what they call the 10 tzaddikim nestorim, hidden righteous people who hold up the world. And they begin to pray with all the intentions. He sees there's no change. The child is only getting more ill. Baal Shem Tov at this point really was desperate. So he went out to the woods. He went to the lair, what they call the thieves' lair, the place where the highway robbers would hang out, which was not safe to go to, but he was known by them. They knew him. They liked him. Baal Shem Tov had his way. He goes and he says to the guy, the head of the band says, what do you want? What are you doing here? Baal Shem Tov, this is not a place for you. He says, I need you. I need 10 of you to come with me and pray with me. Of course, no problem. So 10 of the thieves came. They went to a corner. They began to pray. And you know what? The gates of heaven opened up. The child was healed miraculously. So afterwards, they asked the Baal Shem Tov, all the pious people in town and around you could not accomplish what 10 thieves? So the Baal Shem Tov says, yes. I saw the gates in heaven were locked, and I needed someone to break in. So who do you go to? Thieves. The unusual, the different. So prayer, my friends, is a very interesting tool. It's never actually what you may think it is. It's what you bring to the table. Bring your heart and soul, and then prayers do work. They are answered. But it's dependent on us being there, being present. In your language, in your experience. You may not be a thief, but you have your own unique way in. Be honest, and the doors open up. So, yes, my friends, prayers work if you pray properly. We should all be blessed. Even if we don't pray properly, the prayer should be answered. Even if we don't pray, they should be answered with everything that we need: health, wealth, love, healthy families, unity, harmony in our lives, inner peace. But especially if you make the right container, if you build the right container and use the proper instruments and speak from your heart and soul, that definitely amplifies the possibilities of getting our prayers answered. May they all be answered in the most revealed possible way, all in good health. Thank you. Simon Jacobson here, Meaningful Life Center. MeaningfulLife.com is our website. Check it out. Filled with a robust array of materials and calendar and programs. Tomorrow night, actually, I'm going to be doing an interesting panel, Religion versus Spirituality. Structure and beyond structure. You can check it out on our calendar again at meaningfullife.com. Be well, be blessed, share, like, communicate. I'd love to hear from you. Everyone have a great day.